So my first impressions on the budget, I have a lot of concerns. The biggest one is that I think it's going to take away more than it's actually purporting to give. If you start looking closely, very little of it is actually cash that they're going to give you. You know, there's discounts on charges that they're going to defer, or deferments of charges, discounts on charges, discounts on mandatory insurance payments, or some payments that go into your CPF, which of course is a giant pot that we don't know what exactly is done with it, but never really gives back to you what goes into it. So really, it's not giving you much. But on the other side, it's taking a lot. They announced the diesel tax, and we have a lot of diesel vehicles in Singapore. Every taxi driver is going to be impacted. Our bus services are probably going to be impacted, which means there's another excuse for the fares to go up. And then you've got things like the traveller's tax. The travellers who come in are going to end up paying more duty when they come back in. And then the big one that no one's talked about yet is he slipped in there, we're going to introduce the carbon tax, but has given no details yet. Well, what is that? How big is it? And how much is everyone going to end up paying? So when you look at both sides of the equation, underneath all that flour, I think we're going to end up paying more out of this budget than what we may actually be given. So obviously we're looking at three different areas there. So let's start off with the working. Definitely not. And in fact, it revealed some really bad facts, one of which was 440,000 workers on workfare. Now, a lot of people say workfare, okay, so that's giving handouts to workers. No, it's not. That's giving handouts to companies. Because when you allow the company to pay the worker below the cost of living and the government has to step in just so that they can survive, that is corporate welfare by another name. So it has not really addressed anything for the workers. They didn't talk about minimum wages, which is something that I think really needs to be addressed. And then as far as companies being competitive so they can employ more workers, we didn't talk anything about all the costs that are loaded on businesses, the levies, the hidden fees, the fact that we're a rentier economy and so much is extracted out that way. Even the tax base, we have one flat corporate tax that every company pays. We have graduated income tax on our salary. Why don't we have graduated corporate tax? And those smaller companies pay less tax, they become more nubile. So if you have graduated taxes for companies, you reduce all of the fees and levies the government puts in, and you enforce a minimum wage, that makes some real effect for workers and for small businesses. None of that was there, just a few little handouts, again, means tested on workfare. So as far as the workforce, I don't think it addressed anybody. So on retirement, again, a terrible fact. He mentioned 330,000 people have got less than 60,000 in their CPF when they retire. That is a total failure of the CPF system. How can we have such a large proportion of our population with so little money? And all they talked about was a little top up here and a little top up there. And that's one little drop in the ocean right at the end of the day, because by the time you're 60, 65, that's really going to be meaningless. What you need is total CPF reform. You need a proper interest rate from a very early date, because it's the compounding interest that allows your savings to actually grow. I did a little survey recently with some insurance people. Even at just a 4% rate, if you put $200 away a month from 25 to 45, 40 years, you should have 250,000 in your CPF. And if you've got a higher interest rate, which is what Malaysia EPF is returning, the Australian pension funds, the Norwegian pension funds, all of the other peers are returning much, much higher. When we're only returning 2.5% or 3% net when you add the little bit at the end, the compounding effect is not there. So those tiny little drops that they give you at the end to pretend to hand out, I'm going to give you 1,000 because you've got less than 60,000. Well, what's that going to do? 60,000 over 30 years, as we know, is a couple of $100 a month. That 1,000 is going to give you another $2 or $3 a month, while the cost of living keeps going up and up and up. So there was nothing in the budget that really addressed the fundamental needs for the retirement. So when we look at providing jobs, there was some mention of a reduction in the foreign workforce in a few targeted sectors, one of which obviously was F&B, that they're going to reduce to 35% over a period of time. But there was no mention of the fact that that ratio is 50% in some sectors, up to about 82.5%, I believe, in the construction sector. Then you add to that the fact that a lot of the jobs we're losing are in the professional space, not in the white collar space, the blue collar space, as it were. There was no addressing of that. And then when you're talking about new students or new people coming out, we've recently had all of this talk of don't get a degree, it won't get you a job, it won't feed you, go and try and start your own business. There was nothing really there about supporting you to start your own business. There was some talk of entrepreneurship, but they did mention that there are 200,000 over businesses entities in Singapore, and they only help 200. That's like 0.001% thereabouts. So no real concrete things to be an entrepreneur, no real things to help young job seekers, no real things to help the ones in the middle who have lost their jobs to foreign professionals. And it looks like your only hope now is to be a waiter or a chef or something like that in the F&B industry, because everywhere else is going to continue to be flooded by foreigners. So no, it was very disappointing with what they were saying about working. Obviously the issues we've talked about, some of the things that I would have liked to have seen, I would have liked to have seen things that directly affected people's day-to-day lives. He did mention GST, and the only thing he mentioned was going to put it up to 9% some point in the future. Why do we pay GST on essential items? Why do you pay it on rice, milk, whatever? Everywhere else in the world there is a graduated system. It's not difficult. We're supposed to be a smart nation. Very easy to decide what we pay GST on, what we don't. So all essential items, they shouldn't have GST. There was no mention of any of that there, so I was very sad about that. Already the taxation I talked about, you know, we need to look at a better taxation model for companies. I think it's very unfair and it's very hard on small businesses. No mention of that. The other part was, if you think about it, all of us, we have an earned income and we pay tax on that earned income. That's fair, we pay some tax. When you go to the upper brackets, 95% or more of their income has nothing to do with earned income. It's dividends, it's capital gains, it's all sort of things to do with money and business and investing. And yet we have no tax on any of that lot. So the people who have the most and get most of their income from those sources pay no tax at all, and us who are doing the work, we pay the tax either directly or indirectly from personal tax, GST and all the other stuff. So I would have liked to have seen some serious look at tax reform that would have helped the people, would have helped small businesses, and would have done a lot for the nation. No mention of it anywhere. I would say that this, of course we've had the whole troll balloon thing and people shooting at people for troll balloons. I would say this budget was more of a troll balloon than a full-on election budget. I think if the feedback was right, maybe it is. If the feedback is wrong, well, we know from what they talked about, there's still 11, 12 billion that they can play around with. So maybe we'll have a delay and next year's budget will be the real oomph one on another level. It's really a toss-up. So it was couched in a way that it may be an election budget, but in the reality, I think it was more of a testing the waters budget than a true election budget.